Yes.
We had to go back. And then say, oh, that's my ass gonna be good. And they give me a most for like, it always is.
Okay, so in high school for a couple of years.
So you no longer. No, I'm trying
This is 45 years. I worked at God.
I'm gonna beat up that you get from the cold, from the crying, you know? See, I like that. I like that. I like that. My son makes me laugh. He does. My granddaughter, and there's always conflict regarding the land, I mean, in the constitution, it's like things like. They just put it.
You know, I did it so long, some nobody called me on the first day. I wasn't. Right, saying,
Yeah.
but you know, I was hard to get.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's May 23rd meeting of the Roanoke Valley-Alleghany Regional Commission. Thank you for coming out today before the big 3-day holiday weekend. I guess we'll start by taking roll, and we'll just do that by introducing ourselves and going around the room. So I'm Jim Wallace. I represent the city of Salem.
James Bertha, Allegheny County.
Bill North, Roanoke County.
Dean Martin, Roanoke County.
Stephanie Moon Reynolds, City of Roanoke. Harry Green, Franklin County. 30 Laudermill County, Clinton Portage.
Monroe County.
Barbara Dirk, City of Roanoke.
Hunter Holiday, City of Salem.
D. King, City of Salem. Don Erdman, City of Roanoke.
Peter Volson, City of Roanoke. Big Peter's, Calavinton.
Elizabeth Elmore Regional Commission. Sorry, I'm not normally in this.
Dory,
Corey Williams, Regional Commission.
Robert. Oh,
Amanda McGee with Regional Commission.
Robert Knapp, Regional Commission.
Bailey Hutchison, Regional Commission. Jack Lardner, Regional Commission. Andy Cribb, City of Roanoke.
thank you, everyone. All right, good to know. So moving on to item 2, which is the approval of our consent agenda items. So we have the approval of today's agenda, the minutes from the last meeting on March 25th, on the financial report. So
So moved.
thank you, Dr. Martin.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. North. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. So, last week, the budget passed by the General Assembly included an additional $25,000 per PDC advocated for by the Virginia Association of Planning Districts. This will provide an additional $25,000 of core funding this year and another $25,000 next year. The funding provided to us by the General Assembly is one of our most flexible sources of operating funds in addition to our local dues. So this additional support from the Commonwealth will go to additional projects and building improvements over the next 2 years. This is significantly less than the original $150,000 for PDC that was requested, but we're pleased the state is making additional investments in regionalism. And thank you to all the localities who provided letters of support over to help make the case for this additional support. So thank you all. Over the next few weeks, many of you will receive information about the Southeast Crescent Regional Commission. As you may recall, this is the new federal regional commission modeled after the Appalachian Regional Commission, working to address community and economic development in those areas along the East Coast not covered by the commission. In our region, this is the Roanoke Valley and Franklin County. Specifically, the city of Roanoke and Franklin County are identified as transitional communities and may be eligible for investment programs currently under development by the commission. Commission receives a small amount of capacity building funding to support the SCRC work in these communities, which we have focused on in ways to support the development of affordable housing. In the meantime, if you have any questions about the SCRC, please contact Mr. Holmes. And I think for the Roanoke City people in the room, there might be some opportunity for some funding there. So that concludes the chair's remarks. So I will turn it over to Mr. Holmes for his remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What indulged me, I wanted to tell a little bit of a story. I had a chance to have coffee with my predecessor, Wayne Strickland, and he reminded me of some good news, and that we don't often talk enough about good news that comes out of the regional commissions and some of the work that we do. So in April, you might have seen the news story that the Roanoke Valley's air quality was rated as one of the highest in the nation. We received an A air quality for ozone pollution from the American Heart Association for the years 2020 through 2022. For those of you who have been around in the Roanoke Valley a long time, you might remember that this hasn't always been the case. As a matter of fact, when I started here at the commission in 2006, our regional air quality was as bad as Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads. It's rated some of the worst in the nation. You might even remember the bad old days of Code Orange and Code Red air quality days when we came out and told people, don't go outside. You know, don't go on the greenways, don't go hiking, don't ride your bikes, don't go do all the things that we encourage and rely on people doing nowadays because the air quality was really, really poor. Around that time, the EPA allowed the region to undertake what was called an ozone early action. So rather than the EPA coming in and implementing all kinds of regulatory activities, which would have, at the very least, increased the cost of gasoline and put additional regulatory burdens on construction, we would have had to show how every construction project would not contribute to additional emissions in the Roanoke Valley. So imagine every economic development project, every highway project, every new home having to have additional things in place to show that the construction process, the resulting activity would not contribute to air quality. How little might have got built, how much more expensive. Those were all things that were on deck. The EPA came in and allowed the region to put together an early action plan to try to be proactive on addressing air quality. That lived here at the commission. In fact, the first job I had, that was the main thing that enabled that. Trying to address vehicle emissions by passenger travel in the Roanoke Valley to reduce some of the emissions that was causing these code red and orange days. But a lot of that was also things that would happen to local government and fleet management and choosing not to mow on a particular day because lawnmowers were very emitting, and all these little strategies that were coordinated here through the regional commission and information that was sent out to participating localities that you guys all took action on. So we did that work over about the next decade after EPA allowed us to undertake that without regulatory action, which was particularly interesting because most of our air quality problems came from I-81. Things that were generated by us, it was truck traffic through I-81. So somehow we had to address that all on our own through local strategies. And we did it. I think it's really important to note that over those 10 years under the Early Action Compact, even as the EPA reduced the amount of pollution that was allowed and considered healthy, the Roanoke Valley met and then exceeded and has continued to exceed those air quality standards. And now, as of April, it's one of the best air quality regions in the country. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of the decisions we have made as a region, even outside the Roanoke Valley, being a great outdoors place, of having an outdoors economy, of investing in the greenways and bike trails and all the stuff that we've done probably would not have happened or been successful if we were trying to market that in an area where people were told about outside. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that we've come a long way. A lot of that activity happened really behind the scenes by staff and planning here at the commission, and then a lot behind the scenes with your fleet management folks and private sector who are part of that process. And sometimes that's invisible. You know, we just feel like, oh, great, the air got better, but it didn't just get better, it got better. Things that happened with you and with this body and with this organization. So I want to tell that story and remind everyone that the decisions you make do have impacts. They take a while, and it may not always be visible what's happening, but they have really critical, really important, and really valuable impacts on making the region successful. So thank you for what you guys do, sitting in this room and helping us make those decisions. Thank those of you who participated in the early action compact and got us to where we are. And I'm glad we finally got a grade from the association. So that is all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Appreciate the information. The next item on today's agenda is the update from the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation, and we're pleased to have Mr. Kevin Brandt here with us today. He's the Development Director for the Foundation in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Mr. Brandt joined the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation team after serving as a superintendent of the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal, which is a national park up in the Washington area. He has spent 4 decades with the National Park Service, during which he managed the restoration of historic structures in Yellowstone, Hot Springs, Bryce Canyon National Parks, as well as in a number of other parks and recreation areas. Mr. Brandt also oversaw the extensive repair of the C&O towpath, where visitors can walk or bike alongside the entire 184.5 miles of the canal. So with that, I'd like to welcome Mr. Brandt to the podium up there, please.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be talking about the foundation and the Blue Ridge Rising initiative that we have. Several of them here. It is available online. If you want more copies, sure to find more to share with you. So again, I'm really mic on, or you can hear me if I speak up.
I can hear you fine all the way back here. I don't know.
Don't look at it, that might be.
Maybe push down.
I think it's your tie.
Oh, me too. All right, so let me know if you guys hear me, and please feel free to interrupt as we go, because it's being informal. How many of you are familiar with the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation? That's pretty good. In North Carolina, I think we've been a more obvious presence along the Parkway and the Gateway communities, but Foundation's been around for about 26 years now. And over that time period, we've donated more than $23 million to the National Park Service, some Forest Service, and other two Gateway community partners up and down the corridor. For those of you who don't know, we operate several programs. You all heard of the Blue Ridge Music Center outside of Galax. Hopefully you've been there for a concert. But starting this week, 7 days a week until the end of October, you can go there during the day and hear free bluegrass music. Talented musicians. But on Saturday nights, pretty much every weekend now until Labor Day, there are concerts in the open amphitheater. So that weather, which is unfortunately this weekend, the concerts are there, and it's just absolutely a beautiful setting. We also operate a program called Kids in Parks. And it's a way for parents and grandparents or caregivers to take kids out on trails and introduce them to nature. And there are actually 2 here in the immediate area, Greenway and the Garden City. And they're For a lot of people who aren't familiar with being outdoors or knowing how to, in kids, well, brochures at these locations, and it helps people, adults navigate with their kids and their hunts and other kind of activities that engage kids and introduce them to being out on a trail and enjoying nature. We actually have 250 of these trails in 17 different states around the country. There are families who will set their GPS in their car to these different track trail locations. It's a great way of introducing themselves to nature. We also operate the Bluffs Restaurant, which is down part of your Spartan. It was really the first restaurant opened on the Parkway in 1949. And we raised funds from a variety of sources, the community of stewards that supports the Parkway, but also from the North Carolina legislature and from the Appalachian Regional Commission. It spent about $1 million restoring this restaurant. And this summer, we're trying something a little bit different. We're actually going to operate the restaurant ourselves. There's a lot of road construction up there, and it's last year in particular, it was difficult to find your way. But we're going to be specializing in southern foodways. And so if you're looking for a great weekend adventure, you can go to the music center and then go on down to Downton Park and the Bluffs Restaurant. The other interesting thing that I'll mention about the foundation before I get into Blue Ridge Rising is that this spring, earlier this spring, we now have a specialty license plate here in Virginia. We have one in North Carolina. It's been around for a while. It's actually the most popular specialty license plate in North Carolina. The foundation does on the Parkway. Some of that money from the Virginia or from the North Carolina plates has supported projects here in Virginia, like the boardwalk and trail around up at Pizza Otter. So now that we've got one here in Virginia, we can support projects on the Parkway to get especially license plate. I haven't seen one. It's on my car out in the park. So a little bit more about the foundation. We're a staff of a total of 17 people. The foundation was started in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, so we still have staff there. We have staff in Asheville, which is the Parkway headquarters. We have some staff in the Galax area that work principally at the Music Center. And then myself, I'm in Lynchburg. So in addition to being the Virginia Development Director, I also am the project manager for the foundation. And so anywhere from Rockfish Gap and Humpback Rocks, all the way down to Cherokee, North Carolina. We're funding projects and we're helping either the Park Service manage projects or some we're entirely managing those ourselves. So that's a little bit about where the foundation has been prior to about this time last year. This time last year, we started implementing a planning project called Blue Ridge Rising. Fortunate enough to get 2 Economic Development Administration grants to conduct this planning across all 29 counties that front on to the Parkway. And surprisingly, in all the years the Parkway has been around, there has never been a planning effort that looked at not just the very narrow corridor of the Parkway, but all of the gateway communities that are along the Parkway. Because when you're on the Parkway, where are you going to get gas? There's literally no place on the Parkway anymore to get gas. Certainly no place to charge your EV battery. There's only a few places to get food. And I think there's just the Pisgah Inn and Pizza Otter Lodge as a place to stay on the Parkway. All the other places have been closed over time. So visitors to the Parkway have to go to gateway communities. Frankly, that's a good thing in my mind, because in those gateway communities, there's a whole another rich experience beyond just standing at an overlook, enjoying the beautiful views. And we know that from past experience and past surveys of visitors, 90% of the visitors to the Blue Ridge Parkway come for the views. Now, last year, that was 16.7 million people, the most of any national park unit in the entire country. More than places like Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, Yosemite, and the Everglades combined. That's how many people come to the Blue Ridge Parkway. All those people are coming through gateway communities like here in the Roanoke, Salem area. And that's where they're enjoying and deepening their experience to the area. So what we wanted to do is find ways that we could look at helping gateway communities in a variety of ways, improving the park, improving the visitor experience, helping, as an example, I was just over in the offices of the National Park Service. And again, this year, they're only able to hire about 50% of the seasonal positions that they need. So if you're out there and you see the grass isn't being mowed as quickly, or potholes aren't being fixed and things like that, they can't find the staff to do those jobs. And so we started this initiative, Ridge Rising, to engage all of the communities up and down the parkway, ask them, what are the things that you think your community contributes to the visitor experience when they come to this area? What do you think the things are that need to be done to make that experience better? By better, it could mean that the visitor goes away happier and wants to come back and tell people how wonderful it is. But it also could involve the quality of life of the people who live here, as well as the economic benefits that come from having the Blue Ridge Park literally in your backyard. Across all the national parks in this country, the statistic is that for every dollar invested, $1 or $10 comes back to the local economy. Here on the Blue Ridge Parkway, $1 invested in their budget, which is about $17 million, produces $1.7 billion activity in the gateway communities along the parkway. The last 2 days, I've been over at the Hotel Roanoke for a Federal Reserve. When I shared that with the president of the Richmond Federal Reserve, he's like, "Did you say billion?" He had no idea. And yet, that's what it's been doing kind of year in and year out. So the return on our investment as tax dollars in support of the parkway is really in excess of $100 for every dollar invested, which is a pretty good rate of return. So we had meetings in every one of the counties along the parkway, with 29 meetings. Even though Lynchburg isn't directly on the parkway, maybe because I live there, we had a meeting in Lynchburg as well. So we had 30 community meetings. Then we had 7 regional meetings. We had action team meetings, and all of that culminated in a 2-state summit, which was held in Blowing Rock December last year. And all of that work has been summarized into this document, which we handed around. This is the executive summary. If you suffer from insomnia, I can have the full version of the plan, which is 182 pages. But it includes all the documentation of the various meetings and the county profiles. Into establishing the 6 themes that emerged from all of these meetings. And I'll go through those just a little bit and identify some of the key strategies, because in addition to the 6 themes, there were 59 strategies that were identified. And we asked in these regional meetings for people to rate and rank those strategies. I'll just mention a few of that because 59, there's way too many to mention here this afternoon. First one had to do with marketing. It isn't marketing in the sense that Visit Virginia Blue Ridge does marketing. Frankly, when you think about the things that are already being done in the corridor, we don't want to see those things duplicated. We want to see those things strengthened and broadened, really, and connected across all of the areas of the gateway communities. But things like wayfinding signs. You've all probably been up on the parkway. You have beautiful views, but you can't tell exactly what's down there in those signs. And there's no signs in almost every intersection on the parkway that tells you what is off the parkway. So if you're getting low, you know where to find a gas station, or if it's the end of the day and you're trying to find lodging or a restaurant, you know, something as simple as putting the international symbols on those signs would be a huge help. So that's one of the strategies that was identified. When you come down the end of a ramp, you know, it might say Route 24 this way and Route 24 that way, but again, you don't know really where you're going. And so working with VDOT and NCDOT and the communities, I think that there's a lot to be gained by adding wayfinding. You know, I was over in Benton and I've never been here before, and so I was using Waze as my navigation tool, which is great as far as it goes. But on the parkway, a lot of places you don't have cell service, and so it's pretty useless up there. And so one of the things that came out of these meetings is we need to find a way of getting either cell service in places or creating intended hotspots so that people could pull into an overlook or someplace else and download an app or some kind of mobile instructions on. And it's fine to know whether you're going north or south on the parkway, but you really need to have more information than that out there. And if you have a medical emergency, where's the nearest hospital? You know, and you know, the rules that VDOT has for signage on highways, that there's a restaurant this way, a lodging that way, they don't really work on the parkway because those requirements in VDOT say you've got to be within a few miles. And you might be 20 miles to the nearest hospital. So there's a whole lot of work that need to be done on the backside of implementing something like that. But the other thing that came out is having a real obvious way of finding curated travel itineraries. We've got the Crooked Road, everybody's probably heard of that, great for music, but there are other kinds of curated travel itineraries. Fly fishing is a big thing. What about a dark sky travel itinerary? You know, the Aurora a few weeks ago was a big deal. I went up to Thunder Ridge. And I just couldn't believe how many cars were pulled off alongside the road, double parked. It was really something. So there's a lot of interest in that. The dark sky. Thinking about congratulations on achieving that air quality. That's outstanding. So marketing was one of the things. The other one, next one was visitor experience. And you know, I bet all of us have not enough time off. If you're retired, it's like I'm going to have a good experience like this. So trying to deepen that experience and meet the expectations of people coming to our area by improving trails or building new trails, enhancing the greenways that are here, growing them beyond where they are now. Lots of communities raise the topic of trails and greenways. So we think that there's a lot to be done there to enhance visitor experience, and it works for all of us who live here as well. Parkway maintenance. I think that whatever you gave this about 75 million that's being spent on improving the roads. It will be a huge benefit. It's a huge inconvenience while it's going on, and probably no place on the parkway knows more about the inconvenience of work on the parkway than this area, given the landslide that caused the parkway to be closed in that area for years. But I'll mention the Great American Outdoors Act. You all familiar with that? Fortunately, our senators supported that. It's providing about 40 years worth of road paving to the parkway in this fourth year now of funding. It's just a huge opportunity to improve what most people probably one thing that complains the grass isn't cut. Another, they have to dodge the topics. If you're on a motorcycle, we're all gonna have to suck it up and say, no, just gonna deal with the inconvenience of the construction. But advocacy for those kinds of things and for the amount of funding to support. Is another thing that I think we want to do. It's already cornered me and bent my ear about bicycle active, bicycle safety. One of the things that came out in virtually every community that we. And so we recognize that. We work with the Park Service, the Forest Service, communities along the parkway, see what we can do to make that bicycling experience safer and more accessible. Talking about Senator Kane and his bicycle adventure. So there are a lot of people out there fighting. It's going to do that, probably do it before 10 o'clock. Yeah. But it's just an absolutely beautiful place. The other, I mentioned from the road, the other of our cultural activities, and it isn't just music, it's the artisans that are along the parkway, North Carolina, they're Galax area, because of that, they're luthiers who operate in that area. So there's a whole lot of cultural activities that visitors can avail themselves of. But they don't necessarily know about that. Even if you do some research up front, you may not find yourself in a place where there's a cultural event or something like that. The other thing that came up from a visitor experience standpoint was the need for EV chargers. There are a couple of EV chargers just off Switzerland and North Carolina. There probably are those that are scattered, but they're pretty hard to find. I had a friend visit me from Colorado, rented a EV, and even in the city of Lynchburg, it's hard to find a functioning. So coming up with a plan and working with the communities, the utilities, and the Park Service, because we put them on the parkway, there's a lot of permitting. So there's a lot of work, a lot of. The other things that came out of these meetings, and not so much, somebody raising their hand and saying, well, I think we need to have more EV chargers. It's how do we make our voices heard? One community, if you're Benton on the parkway or you're part of North Carolina, just one voice out of all the voices being raised out there. Our voices speak with one set of agenda. It's our thinking that you will be heard better and you'll probably be more successful at trying to accomplish whatever you establish as next agenda. So these kind of things to establish a unified regional voice to advocate for more parkway funding. Just an example, at the Great Smoky Mountains, they have a fixed budget just like the parkway. But last year in 2023, they had revenue of over $12 million. They don't have an entrance fee just like the park. But they have something now called the Park and Forward. They have $12 million that they're now investing in facilities for this experience. And so speaking with one voice and one set of requests, I think, help us achieve our goals. The other is creating some kind of a forum of all the communities at the governmental level, business and economic level, and at the residential level. And being able to share what our priorities are, maybe from one year to the next, the emphasis might change a little bit. But speaking in kind of one voice, Chesapeake Bay Foundation does that. Its foundation helps foster that. So we're hoping to be able to help foster that here on. The fourth theme that came out of this was resource protection. I mentioned already that 90% of the visitors who come to the parkway come from views. Whether it's solar farms or other industrial stuff, bright shiny roofs on buildings, whatever it happens to be. We need to be cognizant that if people are coming for the views, but it's not a very pleasant view, they're not going to come back. They're not going to say as good things about their experience. So doing things like coming up with view shed protection, things that are models of evidences that towns and cities and municipalities and even as something as simple as this neighbor's guide foundation in the Park Service worked on a few years ago. I'll pass this around. Look at that. It gives residents who might be new to the area, you think about all the sea level rise, the lack of insurance in some places now. People are going to be migrating. You're going to see growth, places like Roanoke Valley, all up and down the park. So these folks who are new to the area are maybe not going to appreciate the resources really like this might be a good way of letting them know how special it is. Special. The other thing I already mentioned, dark skies, but people suggest we should try and get a dark sky designation for your select areas or the length of it. Because that attracts a lot of visitation. A friend of mine at Bryce Canyon National Park does the entire night sky program there. It's a huge hit. And I think your Skyline Drive or parts of the parkway, they're great night sky opportunities. So going after that designation, maybe then coming up with some model ordinances that adopted are ways that resource. Good thing that came out had to do with youth conservation board and similar programs like that. And the Park Service isn't able to fill half of the seasonal positions that they have funding for. They have enough funding to begin with. Probably every business is. And so through the Youth Conservation Board and similar programs, you introduce people to the outdoors and the kind of positions that they can work with the Forest Service with both North Carolina and Virginia, and introduce them to those opportunities because there are opportunities. And even if they don't work for one of those land management agencies, they will start to develop an appreciation for the outdoors. And that's important for all of us, but for those who are in underserved or unserved communities, it's even more important to introduce them to the outdoors.
Amen.
Got a true believer here. The other suggestion that came out of this is trying to build a network of community colleges that are up and down. I think they're somewhat well connected here in Virginia, but I don't know that they're very well connected to their peers and counterparts in North Carolina. So fostering that connection across the state line, there's things that came out of the discussions and meetings that we had. And then the last theme had to do with capacity. In the meetings over at the Roanoke, the third presenters was talking about their lack of capacity. We call it the STP problem. Consider the STP problem. Nobody? You've probably all experienced it. Same two people. You can only give so much work to the same two people. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 12, whatever that T stands for. But there's just not enough capacity in all of our organizations. Really, unless we're working together, maybe we're adding some resources so we can hire more people. But there's just so much opportunity out there. When I think about the crowds that come to this area in October to see the colorful leaves, it demonstrates to me that people really do love this area. A lot of people only think of it in terms of fall season, but right now, the azaleas, the Andrews are blooming. It's absolutely gorgeous up there. And there are times, when you can drive on the parkway even this time of year and you don't see another car for several miles. And so there's a lot more opportunity to attract people to this area. There's certainly opportunity for those of us who live here to get up there more often and enjoy it. But we need the facilities and infrastructure to help make that happen. So do that and to start implementing the actions that are identified here. There's several things that we're doing as follow. One is we're in the final stages of applying for an Appalachian Regional Commission RISE grant. And the RISE grant involves communities and areas across 2 or more states. So because we involve North Carolina and Virginia, we can apply for this grant. And we've gone through the first 2 rounds. We've got the 3rd round submission that's coming up here in the next week or 2. Hopefully by the end of the summer, we'll know whether we've gotten this grant, which is currently valued at about $5 million. So, and it requires a match that is not quite 1-to-1, but pretty close. So we will have something like $10 million worth of added resources to work with over the next 3 years. And with that, we'll do a whole variety of things, many of which are identified in here, some of the things that I've mentioned. But we want to develop an advisory committee for Blue Ridge Rising. We want to create some kind of action teams, and Barbara, you'll cover sign up for the bicycle action team. It's not hopefully so. Dark Sky or working with community colleges, but there are very interested people up and down the parkway in all these communities who are very intensely interested in some of these things. And we want to connect with those people and connect them across state lines so that we start thinking about the Blue Ridge Parkway corridor as a single entity. Because I think we'll all be much more successful in what we intend to accomplish if we're working together. The other thing that I'll mention along these lines is that last year in December, we had our 2-state summit in Roanoke. This year, it's coming to Roanoke. Hotel Roanoke. Many of you will attend. But it was a great opportunity to meet people from other parts of our life. In fact, one of the things that we heard in some of the communities and follow-up meetings since then is that there are counties and communities beyond the 29 county border that really are pretty well connected to the parkway, that feel that they too are gateways, talking to some people in Covington. And they feel like they're a gateway community. They act the same way that Roanoke or Sparta, North Carolina is. But they want to be involved in this. So we want to figure out how we move in those communities because you're coming from someplace in the Midwest. You're coming via 64, right through that area. So that's a little bit, that's a Reader's Digest version, as we used to say, of the 82-page version. And it's a snippet of the 182-page version. It's here. But I'm happy to answer any kind of questions. The one thing I will say is, I used to work for the National Park Service. I used to do presentations like this as a superintendent. I am no longer a superintendent. I take messages back to the superintendent sworn out. I'm happy to do that. Because, a superintendent of a park that's 469 miles long, she can't possibly be all the time. But I know that she cares deeply about the communities, with visitors. I know that she would love to do more and is very interested in what we're doing with Blue Ridge Rising. So we're working very closely with Park Service and the Forest Service. One of the things we talked about trails. First 100 yards might be on the parkway, but after that, you're on Forest Service land. So we're looking at funding projects in Washington and Jefferson National Forest on the trail work. We already do that with Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina. and we help support volunteer projects. Has done many years. So, yes, do you have a question?
Go ahead.
So, okay, that kind of wraps it up for me. I'm happy to answer any questions or take messages, someplace else. Yes, sir.
Okay, good messaging and good brochure you're sending around there. We might need some more copies of that. Take back to our colleagues in the counties we represent, or cities and towns. Three things I'm concerned from your message. And no one in this room, it's no news to them. The condition of the parkway is a safety issue. It's a safety issue for motorcyclists. If they hit a pothole, they could very easily be injured or become a fatality. You got to know where the potholes are. You got to see them just to move out of the way. And I think maybe that's going to be addressed in the future, but it's going to take a while. Nothing moves fast. You get the money, and then it doesn't start till next July, and then maybe it's delayed a few months, and then in 2.5, 3 years, maybe something's done. And I know this just from this section of the parkway. When I was a kid growing up, my parents took us from Asheville all the way to, where the Skyline Drive begins. The Skyline Drive, I think, isn't that run by the National Park Service? And so you have to pay to traverse over its roadway, and if you happen to be a veteran or seasoned citizen, you can get a discount, or you used to be able to get a discount, because my brother took me one day, so let's go up here and get the at the entrance of Skyline Drive and get a pass that's good for, I think, ever. You just pay $25 one time or 35.
Mr. North, I think that there's
Let me
5
finish. Let me finish.
days a year that you can go to the Skyline Drive.
Let me
free.
finish, Barbara, please. Thank you. Parkway conditions. So that's the first thing. Until that's addressed and implemented, you're going to have some challenges with doing anything proactively. I will say this, and that leads me to the legislative piece. The communities along the parkway need to have a legislative program where you get people up and down the corridor of the parkway who talk to their congressmen, what have you. Because at the end of the day, let's all face it, you can't do better unless you have money. Okay, and thirdly, I don't recall, I know we in Roanoke County do this, I know the Virginia Blue Ridge does this, which represents our area. Are you familiar with the Virginia Blue Ridge? Okay, they do a good job too, but I don't see anything on there. Maybe I haven't gotten the page, one of my favorites on social media. I don't see anything on there about what's going on along the parkway, the whole corridor, that you could put on social media and it might attract more people's interest. Maybe I'm off base on that, but that's just my
In terms of events and activities, things like that.
Yeah. Now you're talking about activities that draw more interest to the parkway. Has anyone, I asked the question, seen on Facebook a post from the National Park Service or the Blue Ridge Parkway or the foundation that has a message of what's going on along the parkway? I don't recall seeing it. Now, maybe I haven't followed it on Facebook. Maybe I gotta make it one of my favorites, if you will, or ask to be a friend.
You might turn it down.
They might turn me down, right? But anyway,
No, I think you're spot on.
Yeah.
Road work does take a long time, and $75 million, you have a bridge that they're replacing just south of the Dalton Park area, the restaurant there. $35 million for one bridge. About a philanthropy, it's kind of that's where advocacy can be helpful. Example I'll put it is some of you may remember a couple of years ago, they had torrential rains in Yellowstone, washed out the entrance road up to the park headquarters in Command Hot Springs. Every day. And it was a horrible disaster. Within weeks, they had millions of dollars set aside for ways and other sources and developed a temporary to allow the outfitters, the hotels, the restaurants, and the gardeners people who are planning vacations and coming in from still get in. They've got a terrific network there. Communicating with their legislative delegation, both at the state level, in Wyoming, in Montana, not so much in Idaho. Or is it like, and with their federal legislators. And I think it's a great example of what we collectively can make sure that our force centers. And I think there are a total of 16 UN representatives that come. And we need to think about it as a whole. I think we can be successful. Keeping the Parkway page, just the basic essentials. Expensive proposition.
It is.
And then your last point about events and things like that, that's the kind of the marketing component. Because there's probably, the Blue Ridge Parkway Association does this to some extent. But I don't think it's as well known as state. So, however it's done, there needs to be easy portal that everybody knows that they can go to find information.
Yeah.
Could be down Cherokee at the very southern end of the parkway, what's going on up back rocks. How many are aware of the milepost music
I've heard of that.
starting maybe this Sunday, running until mid-September? Every Sunday, we do free concerts someplace and some parts of the parkway, two places every Sunday. Peaks of Otter is one, Black Rocks is another. Averyville is the third one here in Virginia. And so you can go to those places, you can go to our website and follow the links. You can see who's playing and ways to help out with one and help back lots. Beautiful setting, beautiful big walnut tree that the musicians are under. It's just a lovely way to spend a couple hours.
And you know how I heard about that? My brother, who lives in Nelson County, goes there a lot. He enjoys that music, so. But that's my point. You can get the message out on Facebook. If you aren't already, someone needs to take ownership of that along the parkway. Maybe it's the National Park Service, or maybe it's someone who wants to be one of the two people you're talking about. But at least put that out there. I think it would help raise the awareness of it.
You go to Facebook and like Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation has links to all that studies.
Good. I'll check it out.
I see.
Two quick questions. When is the meeting the two-state meeting that you're referring to in Roanoke? Oh, this year.
Yeah, this year.
Okay.
Yes. It's the week after Thanksgiving.
Second question, and I apologize for being late. I came from Richmond, got here as quickly as I could. What is the connection with the community college? You said something about more cooperation or connection between North Carolina and Virginia community colleges, but what has that got to do with the parkway? I missed that connection.
So as an example, here in Finn, all seeing signs that are damaged or missing. They used to have 10 people in that sign shop. Got one. They're having a hard time finding an intern. Foundation is funding to learn how to make signs using the technology that with a CNC machine is. They've got one of those. They essentially 4x8 sign. And getting community colleges to offer programs that hide that kind of that's really great. It's all computer driven. Nobody picks up an actual tool.
Yeah.
And those kind of things. Our service laptop is in the IT office over in the shop. and they're doing IT repair. So those kind of positions, this is the National Park Service. I would love to see our kids stay in the general area and be able to find new jobs the way they're right. Option is higher. They sort of reports. Up to Warren Stoll, Natural Bridge, basically have the same kind of problem that the Park Service. Some of that is just a bit of a hiring process. But aside from that, you know, young people don't necessarily think of land management agencies or the. And these community colleges have personal relationships in the community. So, and the community colleges that we talk to, the Ridge Community College, they're interested in being part of the conversation. So we're training for positions that are needed.
So do you have a contact at Virginia Western?
I don't think I do, but I would love to have.
That probably is the first step there. Is it only for people who have graduated from high school, or is there opportunity for high school students as well? Because we also have vocational, I'm not sure they call it vocational education anymore. They've got a different,
Very technical.
CTE.
yeah, but they have programs in high school that are focused on
They
skills as
do.
well.
The Youth Conservation Corps can hire people from, I think, 16 to 20 something.
Okay.
And they have these conservation corps teams building trails, repairing buildings. On Parkway, there's historic.
And they're paid, they're not volunteer.
Yeah, they're paid.
You know, that's how the Parkway got started with Civilian Conservation Corps. And it sounds interesting. I think there needs to be, I hope when you have this conference that these folks you need to be talking to are engaged to come to it, because, for example, superintendent schools in every one of our areas here probably should be included, high schools, superintendents, in other words, as well as the community college. Because they might be able to connect the dots, and that's a good point. I saw in the brochure that there were some interns. And that's the first I heard about the CCC since I read it in the history books, if you will. But my uncle, World War II pilot of D-Day, he grew up working for the CCC because his parents were too poor to support him. So that's how they got money in South Georgia to live on, was he wouldn't work for the CCC and build parts of the Parkway.
We'll say, you know, mention others to connect dots with. If there are other groups in your local communities that need to speak to. Parkway Foundation is very intentionally trying to strengthen its connection to communities here. So eventually there will be more people like me, but right now I did, as far as what.
You're a one-man show right now.
I am, but I've got a great team behind me.
Yeah.
And we are very committed to making these connections. Building advocacy for way and able to.
Did you go to the meeting last year in Carolina?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I did attend the Tuesday summit in Roanoke. He's right. I was giving weight on the Parkway, and at one point they gave out. And luckily I was only one road, but if I needed a hospital, I would have been in trouble. But it was a great meeting, with great representation from communities and organizations and Park Service staff and so forth. There's a lot of good energy out of it. I would encourage folks who are interested, and Parkway is an economic driver for the region, definitely to participate in the Tuesday summit here.
Yeah.
I will say, Mr. North, I believe Town of Benton had some Facebook posts regarding the youth conservation
Did it?
corps, getting some of the youth in the William Byrd area. I think that's where I saw it. I mean, Town of Benton's Facebook.
I can take credit for that.
But I didn't see that.
Give a modest help.
I think Mr. Price. It wouldn't be.
I did see that they were pushing specifically the William Byrd students
Okay,
towards,
I didn't know that.
those opportunities for the summer.
Good deal.
Maybe Mill is a destination for an urban development. What's happening at Maybe Mill?
So we are, foundation is funding the replacement of the wood roof. Park Service has given us the specifications for the hand-dried white oak shakes.
Mm.
And they've given me the suppliers, so we'll be purchasing them. And raising funds for the installation. But there's a long list of projects that the Park Service would like to see accomplished. So that kind of covers that. The restaurant, if you're asking about that part of the equation. I don't know really any of the details, but I know that the restaurant itself is not going to operate this year. The Park Service put out what's for expressions of interest or something to see if they could get some food trucks there this summer. And I don't know what the status is. But you're right, it's an absolutely gorgeous setting and walk around there and especially if you've got kids, you know, to explain to them what it was like living in the mountains at that time. It's a real eye-opener.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Kevin, then? Kevin, we certainly appreciate you coming and telling us about Blue Ridge Rising, and we look to see the fruits of that effort here over the next few years. And I think you got a volunteer you can sign up while you're here, so it's a worthwhile trip. And we really appreciate you being here in person versus having to look at you on the screen. So thank you for that.
You're quite welcome, and it's not far between Lynchburg and here, so I'm happy to. I'm out on the Topher on the Parkway a lot, so happy to stop in and visit people as I'm going up and down the Parkway.
Did you drive the Parkway down here today?
I did a little bit, yes.
Yeah.
Not completely though. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Good presentation.
All right, moving on, next item, item 6 on our agenda is approval of the fiscal year 2025 commission's budget. And details can be found on page 14 and 15 in your packet. And with that, I'll let Mr. Hayes read that closed.
Yeah, I'll just have a couple of highlights. On page 14, you've got the summary that Sherry provided, which is kind of high level, with what's happening next year compared to this year. I think largely what you're seeing in the budget is the end of a lot of one-time grants or the wrapping up of one-time grants. So in particular, for example, when you look at the Virginia housing, the budget revenue for that really jumps up next year, but that's because that all that money is going to construction. And a lot of the houses that have been kind of delayed during the early part of that grant are expected to be done over next year. So you're going to be fulfilling a lot of the contracts that we've got with Habitat for Humanity and Landmark for the Rivermont School project in Covington. So we had hoped to spend that money earlier, but as everyone knows, there are huge supply chain issues. So a lot of projects were really delayed. So you're seeing a lot of things like that, some one-time grants that are wrapping up or some one-time grants that the remainder of the expenditure could be happening next year. There was some small increases from federal highway for our TPO programs, urban transportation programs that are increasing some revenue next year. So without getting into any of the additional details that Sherry didn't summarize, I'm happy to answer any questions. The executive committee did meet and review this and is recommending adoption. But if the board has any additional questions or concerns, I'm happy to do my best. Sherry decided to go on vacation this week, so very smart of her, but I will not do as nearly as good a job of answering some of any deep questions as she would. But I'm happy to get follow-up if there's anything I can't answer today.
She knows this budget back and forth. She can close her eyes and tell you what the answer is before you answer the question. I just want to compliment staff for the sheet that outlines wherefores and whys, revenues and expenses. It's really nice. We did vet this out pretty thoroughly. Had a lot of questions this year, but on the executive committee, for the folks in the room, when's the elevator going to be done?
Good question. So
For good.
Actually,
The-
they're not in the room, Phil.
Yeah. So the elevator has been an ordeal. We did do the contract and we've had walkthroughs this week looking at the construction of that. Some portions of it are gonna start this week or next, and don't want to jinx it, but I think we might repair the part that's broken, allowing the elevator to be operated while we wait on the modernization. There's a lot of equipment delivery that has to happen for that probably won't get here until November or December. So what you may see is some things that happen in the next couple of weeks, but the full modernization project will not be done for the end of this year, hopefully not into next year.
Who's project manager on this? Are you the project
I
manager?
would be the closest thing to a project. So from an expenditure perspective, what you'll see is some upfront for the repair portion of that. And then a lot of nothing happened until the remainder, until the end. We'll pay the balance.
Wow, that's later than I thought.
I'm not sure that I want to ask for any more detail, but, because but, we get a lot of detail on the sources of funds. We don't really know what contracts are necessarily that they're tied to.
Sure.
And the most detail we get on the expense items is there's a huge item for contracts and there's also a fairly large item for salaries. And that's kind of all we get. So I'm assuming there's some sports schedules in there that sort of, our work program allocates our time and resources generally at the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
So, there's a reconciliation, if you will, of how we did in terms of using that time and whether or not we report short or had to
Yes.
borrow from another project. You're going to assure me that the executive committee looked at all those numbers and they're a good one. That's
Well, so the end of year stuff, so Sherry will undertake, kind of final reconciliation. Because there's a lot of, all of our grants are reimbursement or almost.
right.
So a lot of that will not happen until next month to catch up on, some that are billed quarterly and things like that. So the end of year stuff won't happen until July for kind of a final reconciliation of contracts. Matter of fact, Sherry sent out the reminder to me and staff to make sure we get all of our contract stuff done before the end of the month. So that will be available, in July or after for the end of the year. So this just represents the best that we knew going in. And as you for those who kind of participated in the rebudget process in January, there are often outstanding grants that we are waiting on information for that are part of this budget that might have contract implications or whatnot, that we will not incorporate in the budget until we get those things done. A lot of those are like federal grants that don't are awarded until October, for example. So you would see some other detail on that later.
Well, I might add, Mr. Chairman, the program work plan that we got approved here in a little bit, and got the hours, estimated hours, funding and hours for each project. So, yeah, we looked that over.
Yeah.
To your point, the last executive meeting.
And the third largest item is our operating contingency grant carryover,
Mhm.
which also is kind of big at some point. Anyway, I'll move we approve the budget, because I don't want to get too deeper into
Yeah,
it.
I was just wondering, it says RV Arc windows in the bottom there.
Yes,
What
so
was that about?
we've got we do have a capital improvement plan. And if you might know, this building is an old Lewis Gill clinic and they weren't built for office space. So most of the offices that our staff are in are examination rooms. And if you parked in that parking lot and looked at this building from Luck Avenue, there's a one narrow window over Virginia's desk. I have been in this building during derecho and not known that weather has happened outside. Someone told me a tornado ran. So what we're trying to do with building investments, and we walked, the executive committee through a lot of this exercise last year, is a balance of things like the elevator, like the lighting, and so forth. There's some deferred maintenance issues, and balance that with when we can fit them in some quality of life improvements for our staff. So the windows has been, natural light in this building has been a thing that has been requested for a while. So we're finally trying to build some of that in, so folks who don't have windows can finally get some windows. It may be the best thing I ever do as executive. Knocking a hole and putting some glass in. So that's where we're incorporating that into this year.
And then I'll just add some color to that. After we took a tour at a potential site to purchase, we quickly came to our senses and said, what can we do to make this better where we are?
Yeah.
And the lights in here, I mean, I've been on this board now for, I don't know, 6 years. Maybe seven actually. November or officer. I gotta tell you folks,
Seems much longer than.
I've been. See, I'm never gonna make 100 years like you did. I do want to tell you that we all have been in the dark. Because until these lights got put in, I didn't realize how dark it was in here. So with that said, that was a huge step. And the folks, I mean, we had a choice. We could have put a picture of a window in their office so they could make it a window. All we could do what Jeremy's gonna say, and I hope the whole building don't fall down.
Yeah, it is important. We own this building. It's a lot of planning districts.
That's right.
So when we did the math, moving or leasing, it still came back to, at least at the moment, it makes more sense to make these kinds of
Yes.
investments in these.
And if you'd have seen this building we looked at, which wasn't far from here, and it was in the city because it has to be in the city because of the charter. You talk about modifications here, you all don't know nothing. We quickly got in our cars and drove back here.
Mr. Wilhelm, did you start to make a motion to approve the budget?
I made that motion. We are.
Thank you. Would someone like to second that?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Blazer. All in favor of the budget? Any opposed? Budget passes, Mr.
Take it
Wilhelm.
on.
Okay, moving on down the agenda to item 7 is the approval of the fiscal year 2025. This is the work program, which can be found on page 16 to 40 of your agenda packet. Again, Mr. Holmes, would you like to speak to that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You all saw a draft of this at a previous meeting, and what you're looking at is pretty much the exact same job. The only thing that's different in this is we're able to go through and assign budget hours and project needs in areas where those numbers were outstanding. Last time I talked to you, there were 2 potential projects that we were still looking at that hadn't yet been included. One was providing assistance to Allegheny County on the plan update. The other was doing a regional childcare study. In the first case, it's decided that at least at this point, we didn't need to budget additional hours to assist Allegheny County. That's probably within our technical assistance budget. If when we're called upon assistance there. The childcare study, we looked at that and realized a lot of work has also been done. The United Way has produced some reports. JLR has produced some data. There may be some a role for us in just promoting what's out there and making sure that folks know the analysis that's already been done and seeing if there's anything we do on implementation. But there really wasn't any need for us to undertake a separate study. So the only difference is we were considering those things, they were dropped, so they aren't in this budget. So the work program committee has looked at this, I think provided their support. The executive committee also reviewed this at the last executive committee meeting and endorsed it. If you have seen the digital copy or there's projects highlighted in green, those are the new projects for this year. Everything else, and there's a lot of ongoing kind of mandatory work. So the projects that weren't highlighted in green are sorts of things that would have been on last year's program as well that are continuing projects. But again, I'm happy to answer any questions. And there's always the caveat, this is our best guess to know what you need, what we have to do next year. We have lots of space in all of our programs for ongoing technical assistance, and we keep up with these projects, and if projects are going to not move forward for whatever reason, we pull them off and we leverage those hours to tackle other things. This is not a prescriptive document. This is descriptive of what we know now that we're doing.
I hate to show my ignorance, but what is micro transit?
So microtransit, kind of the best way to think about it is, on-call transit service. It's like an Uber for buses, probably a way to think about it. So there's new technology, operated by kind of new and upcoming companies that, meld, getting on your phone and knowing kind of where a bus is and an area that a bus covers and being able to call it like you would an Uber. But
But smaller
including the
buses.
benefit, yeah, smaller buses, including the benefit though of essentially the software tries to make those routes as efficient. So it's not a bus picking up one person, it's a bus taking those requests, trying to draw efficient routes. It's bigger than that. That's kind of the best way
Like radar
to
on
think
demand.
about it. But yeah, that's one way to think
That's
about it.
what Valley Metro's Metroflex,
Yeah.
which is on the weekends now,
Okay,
and nights. That's a microtransit program that we're doing.
okay.
So it's a way of trying to, well, fixed route transit would be really inefficient and expensive. How can you deliver transit to somewhere? We're currently working with.
And wouldn't necessarily serve the needs of the public as well.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. This way you're not tied to a route, you're picking people up where they are. Clifton Forge is in Allegheny County. You're currently investigating that, and Franklin County was interested. So we just provide some space to do that research next year.
You want a motion to approve this?
That'd be great.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the work program? Any opposed? Here, just wait, Mr. Banks, thank you, Mr. Burnett. Moving on to item 8, which is the approval of the 2024 community development block grant priorities. And again, Mr. Holmes, I'll let you tell us about that.
This will be the last time we're getting this. Now, this should be very quick. We are required to provide priorities to DHCD each year for potential community development block grant applications that may be forthcoming for those communities that aren't entitlement communities. So we solicit feedback from our members on what their project priorities are, and if anyone anticipates making an application, you should have a staff report in front of you. You don't have these. We've made some requests. We didn't get any deviations from last year's project priorities. So what you're looking at in the recommendation is actually what we told the HCD we're prioritizing last year. And as of now, at least we have not had any anticipated CDBG grant request. Doesn't mean that those opportunities won't arise, but it's reported to DHCD now. We don't have anything on deck. So just needed to share that with you. It's usually in the consent agenda, but we need to provide a bit more feedback this year. Mr. Chair, we just need to, we've been sent to DHCD.
Motion. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That carries, sir. Next item, we've got a few staff highlights. It's folks that haven't been here, we've been just rolling through different staff members just to spend a minute or two to introduce themselves and tell us what they do. And I guess we'll start with Elizabeth, please.
Do it here.
Sure, just speak up so we all can hear, it'd be fine.
My name is Elizabeth Elmore. I grew up and was raised in Franklin County, attended Hollins University. I've been at the commission for 2 years as of the beginning of this month. And the project I'm probably the most proud of is leading the effort to revamp our website. So it's a family of 6 websites. It's a lot of work, but I'm very pleased with the result, making it easier for the public and you guys to be able to use it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Andrea. Sorry.
They call me Andrea, when I work here. Actually, I'll get that. I've been with the Roanoke Valley Regional Commission since 2, so almost 3 years. 21, almost 3 years now. But I used to work here in 2008. I did an internship here and worked here for about a year. And I would have stayed, but somehow this dream job I had in California came available, so I moved to California. But for an entire year, Jeremy called me Andrea.
I still hired you back.
But But my professional interest very much lined up with, you probably can guess, I'm a traffic engineer, but I specialize in transportation. And sustainable transportation has been my interest my whole life. So I previously working here, I worked with the city of Roanoke, kind of implementing what now is the complete streets emissions zero program at the city of Roanoke. And now we're here to develop projects that bring sustainability and transportation. And I think I guys have seen me here and now. I wanted to mention, now that I have the floor, some of you might have had an invitation already to a bike ride that is going to celebrate the cycle track on 9th Street. Have you received an invitation about that yet? No? Okay, then I'll Pedro say the bicycle advocacy group is organizing a bike ride on May 30th. With the intention to invite elected officials to ride and see and understand some of the bike facilities in the city of Roanoke and that can be achieved in our region. So I have provided your emails to them, so hopefully we will receive that invitation, but it is.
I don't think so, but I've heard about it, so maybe, Kevin,
Yeah.
Ken came to council on Monday, and I think he spoke about it then, but we haven't gotten any invitation.
Okay, that's what it's probably.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then last, we have Bailey Eggleston, I guess is our intern now presently, so. Yep.
No, Bailey, we just, our intern just left a little bit.
Okay.
So Bailey, way more than this.
So I'm Bailey Helgeson, and I've worked for the Roanoke Valley Collective Response since October of 2022. I have been serving as Recovery Community Engagement Lead, but just recently have been honored to step into interim director role when Robert leaves on the 31st of May. So this is really timely that I get to introduce myself and share a little bit about what I do. My duties evolve a lot because I try to adapt them to the needs of the communities that I'm serving, and those things change really often. So what I do changes with the needs of our stakeholders and the localities and all of those things. Some big projects that I've worked on in the last year or so is growing and nurturing the Peer Recovery Network, which is a professional network for peer recovery specialists in our area, but it has grown. We provide training and support and supervision and whatever we can to the peer recovery specialists and other helping roles throughout our area. We recently provided a half-day training that brought in people from all over the state. Over 30 different zip codes attended, which was shocking for a half-day training at Tanglewood Mall. And we were very, very proud of that. So we hope to keep doing things like that. I also helped develop a curriculum on stigma reduction, addiction stigma reduction for all of Roanoke County Fire and EMS, so that they can better respond to overdose calls. I also offer my experience and lessons that I've learned in creating and building this work because it's kind of unique to other areas that are trying to emulate things that we're doing. And a big part is sharing resources and education at like community events. So what's important that I mention is I rarely provide work or do these things alone. Motivated by the mission of the collective response and the culture of the regional commission. I partner with as many other organizations and experts as possible to deliver this work. So for example, the fire EMS curriculum was developed with the Roanoke Valley Trauma Informed Care Network and behavioral health psychiatrists from Carillion. The health department, our local community service boards, and the VA are some of the partners that have helped me show up in community events and set up a table and provide what we can. So I hope that gives a little rundown, but my biggest thing is please let me know how I can support your areas and the organizations and citizens and community members that are there. And please let me know what's working really well in your area or who I should talk to or what's been great wins and wobbles in your area and let me know so that I can learn and do better for our localities. So I brought lots of business cards. Please let me know if you'd like to connect or if you have some feedback for me.
Thank you,
so
Valley.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our commission committee reports. Have good news. We only have 2 of 5 today, so let's start with Amanda, please, with the River Blueway Advisory Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a whole lot different from our last report. I mentioned last time that the Niagara Dam Environmental Assessment has been published. We are going to provide comments on that next week. We did have a representative, well, not a representative, of an expert on the FERC licensing process who came to speak at the Blueway Committee last time. He previously worked for AP, and so he was able to talk us through some of the kinds of comments that would be most beneficial. Generally, having read through the environmental assessment, I think that we've gotten a lot of what we've asked for so far, so I'm happy that we're getting towards the end of that process. I do want to mention that this sounds like a Greenway thing, but it's actually also a Blueway thing. There is a ribbon cutting on June 27th for the city's section of Tinker Creek that they have just completing construction on. That is also going to include a new access point in the Blueway network on Tinker Creek. So we're very excited to be able to provide signage for that through the committee. And we are working with the city on that process. And that's really the big stuff from the Blueway Committee over the past month.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we'll welcome Bailey back up.
I just have a really quick update. The Collective Response Advisory Committee met yesterday for our May meeting. We were excited to welcome our 2 new members, Madeline Hanlon from Roanoke County and Wayne Leftwich from Roanoke City. We heard really exciting updates about the plans for the September Recovery Ecosystem Conference. And we approved budget recommendations for the Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority funding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other business anyone would like to bring before the commission today? Any comments from commission members? Oh, I'm sorry, because Mr. Holmes might have other business.
Just a real quick comment. You have seen some of us wearing green ribbons on our lapels. I neglected to mention at the top of the meeting that this is in recognition of Mental Health Awareness Month. So, housing the collective response is important for the commission to bring attention to that. I always like to tell people that going outside and riding a bike is a great thing to do for mental health. So we get to overlap some of the work we do, but on your way out, there are flyers and ribbons in the lobby downstairs. So please take one. If you don't already have one, do another program and show your support and build awareness. And we're thankful for the United Way, Roanoke Valley, and other folks who are behind this program and bringing attention to the month. So thank you.
I was trying to inform Mr. North that there's 4 times a year that you can get in national parks without pay.
Already got my pass.
And I lost my 10-year pass and I really, really guard it. That I have given to Elizabeth, the 2 articles in the Roanoke Times, Parkway View Safety Campaign, and that was for the motorcycles. And that they also included their paving project in the May 10th issue of the Roanoke Times. So those are about the Parkway. You know that I believe that the Blue Ridge Parkway is a community asset. That I think it's a ribbon of highway that collectively uncovers the places and the people that are along the roadway. And I knew Mr. Brandt because he was volunteer coordinator after I've ridden the CNO towpath when he was the superintendent, and then he was the volunteer coordinator for the Parkway for a while before he went to work for the foundation. So I've met him several times. Thank you, Jeremy and Mr. Wallace, Mr. Holmes and Mr. Wallace for having this be informed about this tonight. I know that you that are in the localities realize that you have viewshed requirements when there's development from the Blue Ridge Parkway. I have planted trees to help camouflage housing developments that have been planted, that have been put in to hide the developments. So I've been involved for a long time with the Blue Ridge Parkway. I am concerned about the overlooks because the trees have grown up and you really can't look at anything now. There's monies that have been appropriated for multiple organizations to help the trees be removed to allow the view shed to people along the parkway to enjoy the view shed. My ask that I've been informing you about is about safety. And I have my bike clothes on today. This is not a bicycle issue. It's safety and it's about edge lines on the parkway. There's been studies that have been done by Virginia Tech talking about the effectiveness of the sensors that are in cars now that denote edge lines and center lines. There's been other studies. There's the NUTCD standard, manual for uniform traffic control devices that says rural highways that are over 20 feet that have over 600 volume a day. That standard will have edge lines, that there's guidance for less volume that requires edge lines, that when they being the parkway address the landslide on Roanoke Mountain, the construction company put in edge lines because edge lines are standard requirements on project, and that the parkway naturalist landscape architect doesn't see a need for edge lines, but the law enforcement people think they're really important. And my husband, who was driving the other night when it was dark, found that they were real, would add a lot to the parkway. So the request is to Congressman Klein is to add edge lines in the paving project. And you know that you add these things when you have a paving project. Between 460 and 220, not for the entire parkway, but just for the urban congestion area in this urban area. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? I'd like to wish everyone a safe holiday, and hopefully you'll take a moment to pause and think about the meaning of the holiday on Monday. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to.
Second.
Favor? Ratings over.
Yeah.